Hello and welcome back to the Great Unexplained Debate, where we do a chat that is completely unedited, what we say you see. Now today we're going to look at UFOs, and before we go to my guests, I just want to read a couple of emails out that we've got regarding this specific subject. Stephen from Farnham said that he quite often sees lights in the sky over his house. He knows they're not aeroplanes, but he actually says these are lights out over the sky, and they seem to move and vanish very quickly from their spot. He says they couldn't be aeroplanes because they'd have to travel at such a speed. Rebecca from Carlisle, she believes she has actually been abducted several times. 3 of those times have been on the same day at the same time, and she has no recollection of what happens, but she has always returned to the same spot. And David from Monmouthshire has asked about if we know anything about an American abduction where a guy was standing in the middle of a field. And now I know something about this, I don't know the full extent, where a guy was standing in the middle of a field. His family saw him there and went to collect him, and by the time they got there he'd vanished. There was no way he could have got out of the field, and apparently he reappeared in the same field 2 years later, again saying that he had been abducted. Now, just throwing that out, I'm not specific that specific story, because it seems like a story I'm aware of, but I don't know any specifics of it. But what about alien abductions? Do we believe in them?
Well, stories like that are really 10 a penny. I mean, there are hundreds of cases, where people say that people have disappeared and reappeared. Of course, you have to look at really the specifics, such as who identified him 2 years ago, 2 years later, and how did he do? How did he know it was him? And you really have to look at all the information really closely, and because there are lots and lots of stories like that throughout the world, even in this country.
But abductions, I mean, do you believe in abductions? Do you believe in alien abductions? Do you believe they come all this way just to...
It's a personal thing. What people believe is their personal view on an incident that's happened to them. So whether I believe it or not is completely irrelevant. A lot of people believe they have been abducted, but when investigated, you often find a different reason for their experience.
It's kind of relevant to this, though. I mean, do you believe that there are aliens, or do you believe there are
not
aliens?
Do I believe that there are extraterrestrials that visit this planet and take people away?
Yeah.
Well, why would they?
Yeah, that's not answering the question. Do you believe that they are there, or do you believe that they're not there?
Personally, I'm open to the evidence.
So
it would have to be substantial
skeptic,
evidence
basically,
for me to believe that kind of phenomena exists.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking for evidence for a long time. There's lots of different stories. I mean, of course, the bottom line is that the American phenomenon, the abduction phenomenon, is certainly different than the UK version. We get told that people are taken kicking and screaming. It's more contactee type interaction type incidents, which are reported more so from the UK. Mostly an 80s phenomena, really, and they don't get reported very often now, as you can well imagine, because science is kind of taken over, and of course common sense. And the unfortunate thing is that we still have people who are willing to come forward and say they've got this evidence. And when you ask for that evidence, you can't get it. You can't second test their material. I mean, the latest person to come forward is Dr. Roger Lear, who says he's got these implants with extraterrestrial isotopes in them, which proves that they're not from this planet. Let's see the evidence. Let's retest your claims. And no, we'll come forward with it.
So he won't be tested. He won't go into a surgical procedure to have these things removed.
Oh no, he's actually the doctor who's removed them.
Oh, he's removed them?
He's actually removed them from several people who claim to be alien abductees. And he's obviously had the work done himself, tested, analysed by numerous different laboratories, and he claims that on these reports that he has, that it shows that's evidence of extraterrestrial isotopes. Some of them are meteoric in nature. However, when we want to look at that evidence and say, okay, let us second test this, rather than just going off your opinion, we can't get other material, and it happens all the time.
But this is something. I mean, Fred. I mean, just tell me, what's your standpoint on the UFOs? Do you believe in them, or do you?
I don't know if I believe in alien abductions, although it could happen. I do believe in extraterrestrials. When you think about it, there's got to be other universes out there past this one, and probably more advanced than us. They may not be, but they could be, and they could visit here, yeah. And if you go back to the Aztecs and the Egyptians, the way they've laid out certain things, pyramids and patterns they've made, you could only really do that from the sky. And they were talking about, they were landing bases for UFOs and things like this. So there's a lot to that. Yeah, I do believe in extraterrestrials. There's got to be something else beyond this universe. There must be.
Well, I think the fact that this is a universe, which means there must be a multiverse. You know, I mean, itself there's a universe. And
well,
multiverse,
it's pretty vague actually. We don't exactly know. I mean, it's a grey area, you could say. Excuse the pun.
It's a very grey area. But this is my point. I think, you know, I think we would be fairly arrogant to think that we are the only life
I mean, the amount of planets that are out there, I mean, they should be teeming with life, really. I mean, we're finding out every year that actually life is a little bit more consistent out in space than we thought so initially. Such as finding little bits of evidence on Mars now, which is information that came out earlier this year.
Can I just ask a question which is kind of poignant around this sort of time? Do you think we landed on the moon?
Yes, I just don't think we did it when we were supposed to have done it.
Do you think we landed on the moon?
I think we did, yeah. I really do think we did, but what as Steve says,
In
the time and
1969.
date is a different matter.
I think we did it just a little bit later.
I think
That's my opinion.
I think we did, but then thinking about it further, it could easily have been done to put the Russians in their place, and it could have been done in the desert.
I think it's very strange.
You think how much there is to gain from the space race? Billions and billions of dollars. They had to get there first.
I know this is kind of changing to a bit of a conspiracy thing, but I have this huge there's a belief that I don't think we landed on the moon. Certainly when we said we did, well, we didn't. Americans said that they did. And I think it's something that, in my opinion, from what I've seen, the proof I've seen seems to prove the fact that we didn't because of the sets and the rock formations are the same.
Of course, they couldn't have gone when they could have gone, really, at that time because of the Van Alten, the radiation belt, because that was the worst time NASA could have ever picked to send man to the moon. You would have been radiated halfway there.
Well, but what gets me is that, I can't even get a mobile phone to work now, let alone actually talk to someone on the moon in 1969. But the other thing is with that, you look at the Americans couldn't even get a satellite up there. Of course, Sputnik went up, and it seems a very short time after that, America's actually landed on the moon.
The Russians were ahead on everything regarding probes on the moon, on different planets. They were ahead on everything. The first orbit round the planet, so the first living thing into space. They were pretty much they were going to be the International Space Agency.
What was the first one? Was it the monkey or the dog?
It was the monkey.
And then the dog.
Then the dog.
And then man.
Yes.
So the Russians had the first man.
They did, yes, and they also had the first probe on Mars, the first one on Mercury.
It was Gagarin, wasn't it? The first
Gagarin, yeah.
Yes, and the moon. They were ahead on everything.
So they had the first probes on Mars?
Yeah, they had everything. They reached everything.
It just seems very strange, isn't it, that 1969. I have to admit, you can imagine the Russians sitting watching the television going, no, this is a lie. But no, I have to. I thought I'd want to ask you, because obviously, you're an authority on it, and I've got my own opinions, which I don't think we did. I think it was a fantastic hoax, and I think the film Capricorn 1 was a...
well, yeah. A lot of people think there's been a lot of whistle blowing. There was a Bond film as well where he ran across a set.
That's it,
and there are suggestions these whistleblowers.
So when do you think they landed on that?
I think maybe just a little bit later. I think obviously around about 1970. I think they just couldn't get there at that right time. And of course, what probably a lot of people don't realise is that they were literally in a race with Russia. Russia were ahead in their program to put their man on moon.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of fact that who is going to get there first. And I think if they had got there first, then we would have had no NASA whatsoever.
Well, the funny thing, I actually met Neil Armstrong once, and I'll tell you about that just after this break. So please don't go away and join us in a couple of minutes.